Hey y'all, this is Brady. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you a recipe, cook with me, that is an easy freezer biscuit recipe that I found from moneysavingmom.com. So I'm just going to go through everything that you need, which is flour. I use self-rising, which has everything in it. It has the salt and baking powder, but her recipe calls for those separately, so you could absolutely do that. And then you need 1 3/4 cup of milk. You could use buttermilk also if you prefer that, but I'm just using regular whole milk. And then you need 1 cup of shortening or butter or coconut oil, whatever that you have. And then we're just going to get it all dumped in here into my stand mixer with the butter and the flour, and then we'll add the milk afterwards. So here we are. I've got the butter and the flour together, and I'm going to use the mixer blade, not the dough hook for right now, on my mixer, and then get these stirred together. So always make sure that you lock it. And then over here I'm showing you that I'm going to put it on a low speed. And it takes just a few minutes, but then it will cream everything together. You can absolutely do this by hand with like a pastry cutter or just using your fingers. I do that often. But I wanted to make these somewhat mess-free. So she even references using a KitchenAid mixer or food processor in her recipe as well. And I'm just going to tidy up my counter as I'm waiting on this. Sorry if it's a little loud, if you can hear that noise. And this process takes a few minutes, but I promise you it is easier than doing it with your hands. But we're going to take this off here and check it. And I always just like to, push everything off of the dough hook. And I'm showing you here to check and see if it's clumping together, if you still got any big pieces like I have that there. So that lets me know that we need to keep going. So again, I'm going to lock this, keep it from flying around, and put it back on low. And again, it does take a few moments, a couple of minutes to mix these together and get the butter all broken up into your flour. But you do want to make sure that you do that. You want almost like a sandy texture, but not really. It's going to clump together. So kind of, if you've seen how kinetic sand clumps together, that's what you're looking for also. You just want your butter broken up completely into the flour. And I do use cold butter. That seems to help a lot, but you can do it either way that you prefer. And here I'm going to bump it up one more notch and just see if that kind of helps blend it up some of those pieces that are really stuck together. So you can see here I mixed it from stir to about 2.5, 2-ish mark there. You don't want to start out on that speed because it will definitely make your flour just spew everywhere and make a big old mess. And this does, even on this stage of it, mixing it together, makes a bit of a mess, but not as bad as when you just dump it in there. All right, and now I'm going to check this again. Again, I'm just beating everything off of there, and then I'm showing you here where I'm still breaking up a few pieces. Still got some big chunks. So like I said, this definitely takes a few minutes, but it is easier in my opinion. Never mind my dirty dishes there. and back locked, back on 2. Doing this one-handed is interesting. Um, but, and I apologize for the length of this, and it's maybe like, you're maybe like, oh, this is boring to just sit here and watch this mix. But I wanted to show you in real time just how much this takes time to do everything. Because it is really simple and makes life so much easier to have these biscuits already cut out and in the freezer and ready to go. So, and like I said, this is not my recipe. This is a recipe from moneysavingmom.com. So I will have that linked in the description box so that you can get the exact measurements and follow her recipe for yourself as well. I just wanted to show you in a practical sense how this works out. And I do find that this recipe works very well. So let's check it again. And you can see here everything seems to be pretty well mixed together. There may be a few small lumps in there now, but for the most part, we're pretty well mixed together. And you can see how crumbly it looks. And like I said, when you pick it up and try to squeeze it together, it will look kind of like, it will kind of feel like kinetic sand. So I am going to lock it in place again. Turn it back on for a moment. Again, on stir, not 2 this time. You want to keep it really low. And then I'm going to dump my milk in and make a big mess as I do that. And you want to do a little bit at a time. Yeah, never mind that mess. I'm just going to clean that up there while that is mixing away. Now this is the stage that you do want to be careful and not over mix. I think even in my recipe, or even in my time today that I did overmix just a tad bit. I noticed when we tried the biscuits after I cooked them that they were a little tough, which will happen. And if you hear your motor start to work, you know that the mixer is having to finally pull this dough off of the sides of the bowl. And again, just adding the milk a little bit at a time. You can always add a little bit more if you find that you need to, but I have found this recipe pretty spot on with how much flour and milk. And again, see, I'm just mixing it here until it all kind of comes together. And that should be good. And I'm showing you that when you touch it, nothing really comes off of your fingers. And then you will have to kind of press it off of your dough or off of your mixing hook here. But it definitely makes it easier than mixing by hand, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, when I make fresh biscuits, especially if I make a small batch of just 5 or 6 biscuits for breakfast that morning, and I don't use the freezer biscuits or I don't have any on hand, then I definitely just do it by hand, and it's not hard. It still doesn't take me very much time at all, but in this bigger batch, I just wanted to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to flour my surface, and I'm just using my countertop. If you are uncomfortable doing this right on your countertop, you can do what my Nana always did, which is put down some parchment or aluminum foil, and then put your flour on that. Some people also prefer to just spray their counter with oil. You can do that as well, but you just want to make sure that you've got a pretty large working surface, and then you're going to dump this out onto the counter, and we're going to laugh at me as I try to do this one-handed because that is a task. So normally you would have both hands and you could hold the bowl and then dump it all out there, but can't really do that today with one hand. So I apologize that I am out of frame here, and if you hear kid noises in the background, again, that is just life around here. I have a little bit left in the bowl. I'm not really going to worry about that too much. I will kind of just throw some on top there, but it is going to be a crumbly mess. And you do not want to knead it here because that's what you did in your mixing bowl. If you are doing this by hand and then dumping it out on the surface, then you will want to knead it just a little. But again, do not overmix here or you'll make your biscuits really tough. So I'm not even using a rolling pin. I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to press it out. And I like to fold it over. That creates some texture in the biscuit. And then here we are. So I am using Christmas cooking cutters for now, but you can absolutely use your whatever, if you have a round biscuit cutter, you can use a glass, you can use a clean can that's left over. And then I did roll it out a little bit to get it nice and flat. You can still, like I said, do that with your hands. It's not a problem. And then you're just going to cut these out. And I like to be pretty strategic on mine. You do not want to twist. Whatever you do not twist. So my biscuits are not perfect. You can see that some of it's taller than the other, but I don't really worry about that. And then never mind my dirty floor, because I have been freezer cooking today. And we are in the process of painting, but you are going to see here that I'm just going to keep cutting these out and placing them on my pan. Sometimes I do find it helpful, especially if I'm using different shapes, to cut out multiple at a time and kind of see how they all lay there together. But don't twist, like I said, and even if it falls apart like it did right here, just kind of smush it back together. That'll be fine. But you don't want to twist, because when you do that, you're going to lock the biscuit, basically. So when it tries to rise up, it's not going to rise as well because you've sealed the edge with twisting that. So you just want to press down and pull straight back up. Here, I'm going to push that all back together a little bit here. Sorry, again, I'm out of frame. Doing this one-handed and filming is interesting. And then I'm going to take my rolling pin again and just press that back out. And to get a few more biscuits out of this. And you don't want to roll it too thin. I would say about a 1/2 inch thickness. That seems to produce pretty good biscuits. If you want fewer biscuits but more a thicker biscuit, then do that. If you like tiny thin biscuits, then roll it out thinner. But like I said, about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. Sometimes, some places it's a full inch. But I just fit them onto a pan lined with parchment. And here we are. I've got them all cut out and arranged on the pan. And then I am going to stick these in the freezer, straight on the pan like this. I don't cover them or anything, but I just stick them straight in my freezer. And you're going to let them sit there at least 2 or 3 hours. But you can leave it overnight, which is what I ended up doing. And then here you can see I pulled them all out and I put them in a Ziploc freezer bag. And they do not stick together this way because you let them flash freeze on the baking sheet. And that is all you need. So then if you follow her recipe, you'll bake at 450 for about 8 to 10 minutes. I do about 425. And then that's all you need, guys. So I hope you enjoyed. Please leave me a comment below if you have done your biscuits this way or if you think this would be helpful. And let me know also if you'd like to see more freezer cooking or freezer prep. I am working on some videos for those as well. So thank you so much for joining me. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.